What it do, what it do? What it do, everybody? Give me one moment. We will be beginning on our prelude to Ignarism today. Actually, I gotta get my sepia. Oh, let's get some haunt going. Oh yeah, bitch. Scare everybody. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. We'll do that. There we go. That works for me. Because Ignarisms are always done in a nice contrast. Compared to other streams, of course. Okay, there we go. Just trying to get everything all kind of out of the way so I can just have it all there. Give some time, maybe someone will pop in. Who knows? Give it a little time for those things off the way. So, I guess while people who may or may not pop in and on the stream, but for those who are here after my streaming, we are going to be watching a debate between Richard Dawkins and a Cardinal, George Pell of the Catholic Church. That's going to be fun. It's going to be very fun. And it's going to be on religion, essentially, and evolution. And the questions are actually very straightforward. And there's a lot of... I only went through about maybe a quarter of it, and it's very good. I think we're going to have a lot of fun discussion today. It's only an hour long, however, though, I think we will be able to do 2 hours, maybe more, worth of content here for discussion. So, I'll give it another second here. I got a little bit of a Greek yogurt, or farm-style Greek California peach yogurt by Tillamook to set me along, and got some juice. So we're going to be enjoying ourselves today. We'll be having some fun. Getting to see about... Whoa. There's a bowl in here. Someone had something before I left, I guess. Or after I left, or before I showed up. Okay, I don't care. I don't give a fuck. I'll just pat it down and use it for myself. It's mine now, bitch. Oh, whoa. I need a screen for this fucker. Got like such a big hole. That's my problem with this bowl, but whoa. It's like all ash. What the fuck? This problem with this bowl though, it's like mostly it's got a big hole, so you need a screen. Screens are definitely necessary. Alright. 3 minutes, no one showed up. Well, looks like I'm alone for tonight, but I'm still gonna be doing my thing. Whoa, what are you yapping over there, kitty? You're going... When you make noises, that scares me. Kitty? Damn. I'll move this just right here for now. I'm not going to eat it right away. Alright. Let me get to the timestamp for the first question. Oh, it's just first minute. Okay, so I'll just... As soon as I'm ready, I'll begin playing the video. I just got to take a little sip. Load some legalized brown tobacco that was sponsored by American Spirits. I'm just kidding, by the way. I mean, I have tendency to mix it sometimes, but I don't like smoke cigarettes. Like, fuck that. I just couldn't, dude. I guess that'll be like a little mini Ignarism on cigarettes. On a cigarette. Cigarette. Yes, I mean, with the cigs, yeah, it's bad shit. Don't, like, whatever you do, don't get yourself into tobacco, because, I mean, I find myself more than not starting to, like, mix it, and it's like, well, I don't, like, thought behind my head, it's like, dude, what are you doing? Stop doing that. And then the other part of me, it's like, dude, but the mixture of the plant and then smoking it at once gives me such a good high, so I'm gonna do it. It's like oh man, health versus high, what's more important? But yeah, I mean, in a way I think that does help with getting away with it, because every now and then you might see me pop up like a native spirit bag or some shit. Not that, I mean, it's not like I try to do this often. I really do try to keep that to a minimals, but starting to find myself more than not doing it. I mean, I think I'm noticing I find myself doing that more as like, you know, life gets more stressful and shit. You know what I mean? So as that is going on right now for myself, just personally, if you watch any of my streams, you'll kind of hear me murmur about some bullshit with work or something. You know, just some shit. And yeah, I mean, and whenever I'm going through like a more chiller moment in life, I don't do it as much. So it's just like, it's really just like, it seems like stress is the main key factor for it, but I don't know, man. Just don't mix the shit. It's bad. Yet good, the same weird way. But in the end, just don't do it. But anyway, we are ready. So I'll let this play first. Now let's get into it when he first gets his question.
Good evening. Welcome to Q&A. I'm Tony Jones, and answering your questions tonight, world-renowned biologist and author of The God Delusion, Richard Dawkins. And wait a minute. Hold your applause just for a moment. And Australia's most senior Catholic churchman, the Archbishop of Sydney, Cardinal George Hill, is welcome as special guest. Okay, Q&A is live from 9:35 Eastern Time and simulcast on News 24 and News Radio. Go to our website to send a question or join the Twitter conversation using the hashtag on your screen. Stay tuned for the chance to join Quanda Vote. You can register on your smartphone or smart device at the address on the screen. The address is quanda.vote, quandavote.tv, I should say. Our first question tonight comes from Naomi Roosevelt.
Yeah, here we go.
At Easter, Australia's religious leaders invoke the name of God in order to preach peace, tolerance, political integrity, social and moral fortitude. All obviously positive and worthwhile values. My question is, in what way is the practice of these values dependent on an existing God? Is it possible for an atheist to be a peace-loving, socially responsible person?
Richard Dawkins, let's start with you.
So before he begins, I'll just answer with my personal view as well. Like, how this is going with this debate is essentially there's a question asked, and then it goes to Dawkins, and then the Cardinal, and so on and so forth. It's mostly back and forth. There's a couple of questions where it's just one of them, but for the most part, I'm just going to kind of answer the questions myself the best way I can, and then just pretty simple stuff. And then I'm going to let him talk, kind of give my view, and then let the other guy talk, give my view, so on and so forth. So, yeah. Or just whenever I feel like there needs to be input at any point. So, for that first question, I think just, yeah, atheists can totally have that, instill these values, because I do. And I'm an agnostic atheist, religiously speaking, I guess. So, yeah, most definitely. I mean, that's a pretty straightforward answer. It's just yes. I mean, anyone can. I mean, it's just kind of part of that social contract to have some basic morality instilled into life. And that's not like, oh, you know, you must like follow these rules at all times. It's like, it's just a basic understanding of what's right and wrong. Like, it's obviously wrong to just go out in the street and kill somebody. That's obviously wrong. And I know that. And I don't need a God or a book or a religious holy book to tell me that. Like, I just know that. And I don't need, for example, a book telling me that stealing is wrong or that raping somebody is wrong. Like, I mean, there's just basic morality. I think it can be instilled in people, though you have to encourage it. Like, so you have to, so as when you're a child, of course, a lot of people bring up their children religiously. There's plenty of examples. I was brought up religiously in a very Christian family, or at least my mom was very Christian. My dad calls himself agnostic as well. And, yeah, and I just have a lot of religious folks in my household right now, which is fine. I don't care. one of them, I actually, whenever we do talk on religion, him and I actually have a lot of points we kind of agree about. It's just, he calls himself Christian, but to me, he seems more like an Abrahamic deist in a sense. Like, he identifies the deism with the Abrahamic God, Yahweh, or even in the Quran they call him Allah, or just God. So, I mean, that's how I see him. I mean, he probably doesn't see himself as that, but that's just how I see him, and because he does use Christianity as kind of his main core of his religious philosophy, but there's far more of his views don't align with what the Bible is. Like, him and I have had a talk on abortion. I was able to actually sway him on that idea by just explaining the basic science of abortion and how it's not morally wrong. It should just be a woman's choice. And here's when, like, the nervous and actual living viability comes into play in pregnancy, which is about, I think, the 10 to 14 week period or the 12 to 16 week period. It's in between that period. And it just kind of depends on the development of that particular fetus, and I think, like, even to, like, the 4 week period, you're still essentially somewhat of a zygote. So, well, I think not by that point. I mean, you're definitely, like, you start off as like a gamete, and then you start forming into a zygote, and then I think there's like one more before it becomes a fetus. But my biology is kind of very rugged. Like, I haven't delved into biology as much as I have, but I do have a very large fascination and love for biology, so I do tend to hold a lot of that. But I mean, yeah, so just overall, can atheists have, like, values towards peace and love and understanding? So I don't know the exact things she was specifically saying, but I know she said peace, and I say yes, straightforward. Next question. So I mean, of course I want to go into explaining it, but let's hear what Dawkins has to say now.
Well, obviously the answer to that question is yes. I mean, that could hardly be otherwise. It is true that Christianity has adopted many of the best values of...
Here, I'll turn it up really quick, because I don't know if it's loud enough, because he is a very soft-spoken man.
...of humanity, but they don't belong to Christianity, or indeed to any other religion. I think it would be very sad if it were true that you really did need religion in order to be good. Because if you think about it, what that would mean would be either that you get your morals and your values from the Bible or the Quran or some other holy book, or that you are good only because you're frightened of God, because you don't want to go to hell, or you do want to go to heaven. Now, as for getting your morals from the...
So, before we continue on what he's going to talk about here, let's just go with that statement. Let's just kind of dive into the whole heaven and hell idea. Like, to me, that just already sounds like a very phallic argument, because, I mean, think about all the Christian sects, and then all the Islamic sects of these religions, and then think about the Catholic and Orthodox sects. Like, they're subsects of these religions, and they all have different interpretations of who can go to heaven, and who can go to hell, and and how God will judge or interpret who goes and who doesn't go to heaven, essentially. And with that, I mean, how can God essentially be just when there's people who, like, for example, like, there's Christians who say atheists are going to go to hell. Well, that basically means I'm destined to go to hell, but I go out of my way to, like, help people sometimes. Like, even though I know the homeless people in Portland are probably going to buy drugs or beer or liquor or whatever, or what have you, I still will give them some change if I have some, because, just for me, I'm just a decent person, essentially. I mean, I don't want to, like, title myself in any way, but I mean, I know I am definitely a decent and a good-hearted person, because I have examples of that. And I've also, I remember last year, one of my friends made, like, 50 sandwiches, just a variety of peanut butter and jelly, from, like, ham and cheese, turkey and cheese. Like, he made, like, a variety of different sandwiches, and he asked, hey, do you want to help me give sandwiches to the homeless? And I just said, fuck yeah, because I understand, like, homeless people don't really have a lot of, they don't barely have any money to go buy food, and usually whenever they do, they're just trying to drown their sorrows and suffering away because that makes them feel good and it kind of escapes their pain, and which is very unfortunate, but that's what they do. I mean, because I have had, not me personally, but I know of examples of people who've been through that. I've talked with homeless people in Portland. Because I know that they're not, I can tell with a vibe on a lot of them when I know they're not going to do some freaky shit with me. Because I can even go to another story, but I won't, about, me and my friend, we had a guitar and a little drum. It was before I got my Kaloons, which I've brought out before. But we had a little drum circle formed, and a couple of homeless showed up. And a lot of them I can tell were decent and good folk. And I actually remember seeing one of them at a show before, like at a concert in Portland. So I knew one of them, and he told his story, and he was actually going on the right track for himself considering his situation, which was great. I mean, I even know homeless people here that, know how to make a living while being homeless. So, but I see their plight and I think about how can I help them, even because so many struggle, and I get that. So for me, to be basically destined to go to hell does not sound like a just God. And considering how he can be easily manipulated in that fact anyway, how can I believe in such a God, essentially? I mean, for me, I just can't. And even in that standpoint, I have kind of a natural resistance against authority anyway. I mean, I'm a pretty libertarian person when it comes to a lot of things, and just practically everything. I'm pretty libertarian in that sense. For me to, even as a child, I remember even as a child being fed a lot of, the things that God would do, essentially, if I were to do sin or whatever, because it was such a, big thing. Or, from, the simple thing from, lying, which as a kid I did a lot, to be honest. And then, what was another thing I did as a kid? I kept, a secret from Mom at one point, around, 6th grade or some shit, because me and a friend were doing something, on our block, and we kind of did a lot of shit that wasn't probably meant for, we were doing a lot of rebellious shit, basically. I don't remember exactly what, and I was just trying to keep that, I was, so in denial and not, trying to, make it not look like it was all me or whatever, but, I mean, even the idea of something's that, because I just don't want to get in trouble and shit. And then, also, I found out what cursing was around 6th grade, so me and my friend did it a fucking lot. I mean, we were saying, literally shit, fuck, cunt, goddamn, literally every other word. Those specifically. I think bitch a lot as well. I mean, we were pretty rebellious as kids. I mean, I don't, the person that used, that lived down my block, who was my friend at the time, she moved away, so I don't know, what happened with that, but, I mean, yeah, but even with that, am I seriously going to be destined for hell because of some past wrongdoings or whatever, essentially, and I haven't accepted Jesus in my heart or something like that? It's how can I accept someone in my heart? I mean, first of all, that just sounds like emotional tear-jerking or tugging at my heartstrings with that, because it's you put someone that you love within you in your heart. It's no, I mean, that just seems creepy in a way, honestly. The idea that a spirit basically comes with inside you and is now a part of you, and is will help think out your thoughts and stuff that. Just that just sounds like I lose my free will and I have a spirit inside me, and I don't like that in the first place. And also, that just sounds ridiculous. So I mean, as a kid, I questioned religion a lot inside myself, and I don't think I was very open about it until maybe around 12 or 14. I don't remember exactly which age, but yeah, I mean, the whole idea with heaven and hell just seems like such a ridiculous argument, because in one way, it's, you know, some religions like, oh, you know, if you just go to the pastor and, you know, go into like the box where you go, you know, talk to Father and forgive your sins, and he tells you some shit to do to have them all forgiven or whatever. Like, I don't know what that exact thing is called, because I don't give a fuck. But I mean, that very idea just seems very stupid and very phallic, because what if I decide to go kill 20 children and fuck their dead bodies, and then I burn the building that they were inside and force their mothers to stay inside alive? Like, I mean, and then I go to the church the very next day. It's like, yeah, I raped a bunch of dead children and I made their mothers burn alive inside a building. Like, I mean, and then the father's like, oh yes, you must do 500 Hail Marys and 20... some, I don't know, like, blessed be the Lord's or some shit. And it's like, I mean, that just, no, that just, I mean, first of all, the person, whoever did that, should be convicted of crimes and honestly put on death row because of how atrocious that fucking sounded. Because, I mean, but I'm waiting for that to happen, because, I mean, they're, like, I'm just an edgelord, so I went to the most radical extreme on that. But, I mean, if that happened, death row for that one, sir. Anyway, I am going on really long tangent on this one little thing. So I'm going to continue to talk, because we're 20 minutes in, and we haven't even, or we're 2 minutes in on this video, and we are already 20 minutes in. And oh, hello. Greetings, Joe. You did catch me 20 minutes in. I just went on 2 little rants, and luckily this video just started, so you didn't really miss much, to be all honest with you. You just missed me talking a bunch. But we're just about to continue with the video, but we're watching a debate with Richard Dawkins versus the Cardinal. And it is quite, it's a really good debate. I only watched like about a quarter of it, but I already can tell. I was like, oh man, I have so much to talk about. But yeah, I mean, overall, this is kind of like delving into Dawkins' philosophy on religion, and how, to me, like, he's like such an influence on why I call myself an agnostic atheist. But anyway, let's continue on here, and I'll probably start delving into my yogurt.
Bible. I very sincerely hope nobody does get their morals from the Bible. It's true that you can find the occasional good verse, and the Sermon on the Mount would be one example, but it's lost amid the awful things that are dotted throughout the Old Testament, and actually throughout.
And just to get with that really quick, let's just mention that Lot in Sodom and Gomorrah basically was trading off his daughters to get gangbanged by the whole city to prove to God or something that he was like a good man, or like the good holy man. So yeah, letting your daughters be sold or something, totally great. And then his daughters get him drunk and then forcibly rape him. Yeah, sounds great. And also that just slavery is condoned. Like, there's so much wrong with that even with that alone, I'm just like, no, not my book, thank you, but no thanks.
The New Testament as well, because the idea, the fundamental...
My only upset is that he didn't get into some examples, because if he pulled some examples when just some quick, off the top thing like I was trying to do, like, I think he would, I think the argument towards people will definitely be, I don't know what his audience is. It sounds like a very strong mixture of 50-50 of, like, Christians and atheists that both, like either or of these guys. Because I think this is, like, in Australia or something. Because all these people are very Australian. And there's definitely a mixture of questions that are either, like, from atheistic background or religious background. And to her, the lady that just... asked the question earlier, she definitely had a religious background because she was talking about Easter. So, anyway,
idea of New Testament Christianity, which is that Jesus is the Son of God who is redeeming humanity from original sin. The idea that we are born in sin And the only way we can be redeemed from sin is through the death of Jesus. I mean, that's a horrible...
Okay, even with that, why must the sins of every person be forgiven for basically the torturing the death of a man? And if you want to see a great example of that, Passion of the Christ is a great example of just basically watching how a man gets tortured to death for the sins of everybody, basically. And that just sounds like such a tragic and awful story. And the way the Passion of Christ did it, it made it look like more like a snuff film, if anything. Like, oh God, what was Mel Gibson thinking? Ugh. I've seen, like, my mom used to, like, practically religiously watch this movie every Easter for a while. And I just refused to be in the room because I would, like, sneak in there and it would just be at, like, one scene, he would be, like, getting, like, 9 cattle-tailed with, like, the hooks and these whips and his back's getting shredded. And it's like, what the fuck? Like, this is, like, solemn and, like, oh, no. It's like, no, that just is fucking awful. That's a terrible movie. I mean, ugh. It's like, if you're gonna do something like that, you might as well just, like, at least, like, have the whole life of him and then condense all that practically snuff, torture, softcore porn into, like, 20 minutes of the whole film going through his life. That would have even been better, and probably I would watch it just, you know, just to not make my mom have a fit that I'm not watching it. I mean, it's just like, man, that movie is just awful. And if that's the example of how Christians, I guess, see, you know, how Jesus went through everything, then sign me the fuck out, because that is just egregious how they use essentially one man, so, you know, with practically being tortured to death. I mean, seriously. I mean, I you know, I've never really thought about that, but I mean, it really is, oh my lord, you know, it's like, you know, I mean, I'm not, like, I really 100% know if Jesus really did exist or not, but I've always had, like, strong leanings that he did. This, I mean, not as, like, this, you know, spiritual type of character, but as an actual character, as, like, the architect or the carpenter and the healer, or the guy that everyone claimed to be. Because I think I remember hearing, looking up about Roman texts, like actual, like, Roman empirical, like, texts and documents of some, I don't know, his name wasn't, like, literally Jesus. He went by a different name, but I don't remember which one. But I do remember seeing something about that. I would pull it up, but I mean, we still got a long way to go, and I want to keep this going. I mean, we're halfway, we're half an hour on our stream, and we're, what, 3 minutes in on this? It's like 10 minutes of me, it's like 8 minutes of me talking and 1 minute of them talking. It's like, holy shit.
Idea.
And we got an hour.
Idea that God, this paragon of wisdom and knowledge, power, couldn't think of a better way.
Shit, there's 3 people
to
watching.
us our
Whoa,
sins
I got a
than
fat
to
bomb.
come
What the
down
fuck?
to earth
Howdy, everybody.
in his outer ego as
Welcome to
his
Ignarism,
son,
our new segment.
and have himself hideously tortured and executed so that he could forgive himself.
Okay, let's go to George Bell on that. Well, there's quite a few things that might be said. First of all, our tradition goes back about 4,000 years. So whatever these values are,
4,000 years? I thought it was about 2,000, because a lot of people say the world is like 6,000 years old or something like that. And Jesus wasn't actually alive until around, like, the very, like, last moments of the BC. So, oh, it went back down to 1. I wonder who the fuck showed up. I'll pull up this on the side. But, yeah, I just I just didn't know what he meant by that. And it's just like, what? I don't think Catholicism was like 4,000 years old. I'm pretty sure it's a little younger than that. Only a little bit. I don't know.
We've taken over. We've got to go back a little bit of a distance. And it's interesting to look at pagan Rome before there was Christian influence. 40% were slaves. Men and women fought one another to the death in the Circus Maximus or the Colosseum. Women had no rights whatsoever. Infanticide was practiced regularly. The noble families didn't want baby girls. Christianity changed that, not perhaps by itself, but largely.
And the Christian story, we're Christians, we're New Testament people. There was an evolution in the Old Testament, and there are some awful things there. It developed. The notion of God was purified as it went through the...
So are you admitting that the Bible was edited to make God look better? Sounds like you were saying that you had to edit it and revise it a little bit. So that would mean you're admitting that this is a man-made book and that it's kind of a scam. So, oops. So I don't think he realized what he was admitting there, and I don't know if anyone else is kind of able to catch that. But I didn't catch it the first time, but when he said it now, I went, oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Isn't that saying that then the Bible's being edited and you have to change it every now and then to purify what God looks like? So, yeah. Just an interesting little comment he threw in there, so I like that. I liked how he did that.
Old Testament.
Can I just interrupt you just to bring you to the point of the question, which was really about whether atheists can lead a good life and be good people and socially responsible and so on.
Yeah, absolutely.
You accept that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it helps to believe in God because there's a Polish poet Milosz who says that the opium of the people today is the belief that they won't be judged by God when they die. That.
And this Polish poet had what sources back that up? Because I'm pretty sure the opium of the people isn't if they're going to be judged by God when they die. I'm pretty sure the opium of the people is opium. I mean, what? But that just kind of like, what? I mean, even when I first read, because I was over hearing this just to see if this was something I wanted to talk about, because I had a couple things pulled, but this is the one I liked the most. And I was just like, what? I mean, I still try to wrap my head around that, but anyway.
Have committed great crimes, done awful things, are going to get away with it, and that the people who've suffered unjustly, had terrible lives, that's it.
Okay, let's move quickly to our second.
And they're also pulling like little Twitter things up on the screen too. And I can't tell who it said it, but someone said Christians don't have a monopoly on decency, which I agreed with because I mean, decency is just something that humanity, is able to do. I mean, of course not everybody, because there's people who are just sociopathic and just utter dicks, but can't help that. At least, you try to bring decency yourself throughout the world. And yeah, Christians don't have a monopoly on it, because anyone or any group can do it or push for it.
Question
Pretty simple.
From Claire Bonner.
Religion is precisely often blamed for being the root of war and conflict. But what about all the good it has done for our society? God-centered religion has been the birthplace of schools, universities, hospitals, and countless developments in science as well. Richard, if you believe the human drive to seek the truth and to constantly improve ourselves is merely a mechanism for survival, then what's the point and why should I bother?
Okay, so for her first point, before we get to her main question, it is actually true that religion was kind of like the foundation of what schools and a lot of research is too. I mean, look at the very, very early days of Islam, like its foundations. A lot of what Islam's achievements was into astronomy, into a lot of different sciences. I think even physics a little bit, and mathematics. And I think it was it wasn't the Ottoman Empire, but it was, I don't know exactly which empire was like the leader of that, but I think it might have been the Persian Empire. Don't quote me on it. But it was one of the Middle Eastern empires during like the height of like this golden age of Islam. That's what it was called, I think. I don't want to look it up real quick, but whoops. But yeah, I mean, that is true to an extent there, yes. And And then to her second point, why if human survival is just a mechanism, then or if I forgot the exact question, so we'll just let Dawkins answer this one because I was holding on to the main point first too much on it.
It's an astonishing idea to say, why should you bother just because we have a scientific understanding of why we're here? We do have a scientific understanding of why we're here, and we therefore have to make up our own meaning to life. We have to find our own purposes in life, which are not derived directly from our scientific history. When you say that Christianity has been responsible for a lot of good, including science, by the way, which is somewhat ironic, I think that most of the great benefits in humanity, such as the abolition of slavery, such as the emancipation of women, which the Cardinal mentioned both of, these have been wrung out of our Christian history without much support from Christianity. I, as an atheist, my friends as atheists, lead thoroughly worthwhile lives, in our opinion, because we stand up, look the world in the face up to the fact that we are not going to last forever. We have to make the most of the short time that we have on this planet. We have to make this planet as good as we possibly can and try to leave it a better place than we found it.
Now, to some degree...
And I 120% agree with that. I don't even think I really need to follow up with that. I just want to mention how much I really agreed with that. It's just totally agree with it. Nothing really else to say. He worded it out so perfectly. I don't really need to say what else. A lot of my core philosophy essentially came from that statement. And, I can derive examples even in other cultures. Like, I mentioned a couple times before that Native American cultures, some of them at least, I don't know if all of them practice it, but a lot of them thought that that they needed to leave the land and the world that they lived on a better place, not just for the next generation, but the next 7 generations on. And I totally agree with that, because we should be trying to make this world a better place, because there is too much chaos, there is too much destruction, and too much exploitation, and too much suffering going on in the world, and that 100% needs to change. And with what Dawkins said, I just totally agree. So there's nothing really else I need to say about that. Just totally agree with that.
You've already answered this, but there's a follow-up question. I'm going to go to that now. It's from Rebecca Ray.
Okay, my question for you today is, without religion, where is the basis of our values? And in time, will we perhaps revert back to Darwin's idea of survival of the fittest?
Okay, that question is kind of ridiculous, because our morals aren't going to go anywhere. They're just there. It doesn't take real... I think I even already went into it a little bit. Earlier. Because it doesn't... like I said from earlier, I don't need a god or a particular religious holy book or just religion in general to define what my morals are. Just knowing what is acceptable in society and what I have experienced and what I see going on in the world. That's what builds my, my morals and morality on that issue. So it doesn't take a religion for someone or society in general to still have a foundation of morality. It just really doesn't. Because there's plenty of people that even I know from school, from just around, that are agnostics or atheists or straight atheists, or etc., that just have just great morals. Because they're just reasonable and thoughtful people and just decent. So ridiculous question personally. It wouldn't revert to Darwinism's survival of the fittest. It wouldn't go back to that. In a way, we just still naturally in a way practice it, even if we don't really know it. Because what do you think trying to look attractive for a woman or for a man if you're a woman, or you're trying to look, really like essentially like a stud if you're a man for a girl. I mean, that it's not necessarily survival of the fittest, but it's still, but it's more like, I will come out on top overall. And while it's not like, you're gonna die or whatever, but I mean, but it still kind of plays on with that, because if you're unable to succeed out in life or whatever, you end up just being essentially like what would be considered a squalor, or just like a throwaway, which is, one, just unfortunate, but two, just like in a lot of ways just kind of how society runs. I mean, considering how there's so much impoverishment and what was the other word? There's so much homelessness and stuff like that, and such a bad opioid crisis. I mean, it does kind of play on with, I mean, not like with just other, people just around, but in kind of class-wise too. I mean, that delves into something totally different though, and so I won't go dragging on in that tangent because I'm digressing. But let's see what Dawkins has to say about this ridiculous question, though.
Richard Dawkins, you can answer that, and I'll bring in Catholic Cardinal.
I very much hope that we don't revert to the idea of survival of the fittest in planning our politics and our values and our way of life. I've often said that I'm a passionate Darwinian when it comes to explaining why we exist. It's undoubtedly the reason why we're here and why all living things are here. But to live our lives in a Darwinian way, to make a society a Darwinian society, that would be a very unpleasant sort of society in which to live. It will be a sort of Thatcherite society. And we want to, I mean, in a way, I feel that one of the reasons for learning about Darwinian evolution is as an object lesson in how not to set up our values and our social lives.
George Pell.
Well, it's interesting because I think in the space of about 2 minutes, Richard has said two different things.
How? He explained. How? He didn't. But go on. Let's hear you out.
One of which is that science can't tell us why we're here, and then in the next minute.
Yeah, science. Okay, I mean, that was a really confusing way he worded that. I'm not too sure if he's asking or saying that science doesn't tell us why we're here, or it does say. And honestly, I don't know the exact answers to that question myself, but I think it does. And just, a basic way of how life operates. But I mean, but even Dawkins earlier said that it's up to us to just kind of find our personal meanings to life, essentially. I mean, that's essentially up to us. Like, I mean, the meaning of life scientifically is essentially that it spawns, reproduces, multiplies, and repeats, essentially. I mean, there's a pretty basic concept with how just life in that sense works. So he wasn't saying two different things, though, so I mean, he's just throwing out a lot of freaking curveballs, because he doesn't really have much fruitful to say. He said some ridiculous things later on.
Trying to say that it does.
No, I said it can tell us why we're here.
It can't.
Well, I simply contradict you in that case.
Well, what?
Yeah, he's not explaining anything. He's like, what? It can't, what? Explain why. Just go ahead and explain why, man. Go ahead. Quit dodging that and explain to Dawkins why. I mean, yeah, you're just contradicting. You're just having Dawkins contradict you, because, yeah, I mean, he just. Oh my God.
So, what is the reason that science gives why we're here? Science tells us how things happen. Science tells us nothing about why there was the Big Bang, why there is a transition from inanimate matter to living matter. Science is silent on. We could solve most of the questions in science, and it would leave all the problems of life almost completely untouched. Why be good?
There are, why be good is a separate question, which I also came to. Why we exist, you're playing with the word why there. Science is working on the problem of the antecedent factors that lead to our existence. Now, why in any further sense than that, why the sense of purpose, is, in my opinion, not a meaningful question. You cannot ask a question like, why do mountains exist, as though mountains have some kind of purpose. What you can say is, what are the causal factors that lead to the existence of mountains? And the same with life, and the same with the universe. Now, science over the centuries has gradually pieced together answers to those questions. Why in that sense? It's true that there are still some gaps, but surely, Cardinal, you're not going to fall for the God of the gaps trap, saying that that religion is going to fill in those gaps which science has so far not yet answered.
No, I'm not going to be diverted at all. I'm happy to come back to that.
Okay.
We will be coming back to it because I know there are questions that relate to some of the bigger issues you're talking about, but you can respond and then we'll move on to our next one.
I hope I'll be allowed to.
You certainly
Thanks.
Yeah, so what Dawkins explained in more detail essentially is that science, when it doesn't have an answer to a question, it will have theories, and it will go into finding out what it's about. That's why astrophysics, for example, is still a very unexplored field, if you can say, because there's still so much about space and the universe and the cosmos that we just don't know about yet. And that's going to be, like, I mean, we're just recently learning about dark matter. We're just recently learning that there's plausible life on Europa and Hercules on Saturn. So, I mean, just, you know, science is always going to continue to pursue these questions or pursue the answers for these questions. So, just because there's gaps within these areas of science overall, I mean, you can make it, because, I mean, for a long time we didn't know what volcanoes were doing, and then by studying them and learning more about them, with science, we were able to learn about what they do. Now we have geologists and I think there's, I don't know what the name of who specifically like studies volcanoes, but there's a field for that. So I mean, there you go. I mean, and now we're able to, like, seismologists would probably be another example of who would be learning into about that. So I mean, I don't know. It's just like science is able to explain what we do understand now, and for what it doesn't have answers for, there's theories to fill that in with evidence that we at least do know, and then put in hypotheses of what it all means until we actually discover it, or essentially. So, I don't know. What have you been thinking about this so far, though, on this little segment, Ignarism? While I load this up really quick. I mean, it's a very, very interesting topic, though, for sure. And because Dawkins, for me, is especially, like, one of my biggest influences on, you know, my world philosophy. I mean, this is definitely one I love talking about, for sure. I mean, I have one of his books. I mean, I got it right here. So, and also, I think when this book came out, he was doing his debates, because he was saying that he was the main author for that, which I think was, at the time, his most recent book. I don't know if it still is, but yeah. But, I don't know. Well, I'm loading this up. I mean, what do you think so far? I mean, because it's quite interesting. Is your brain hurting at all? I'll give you a moment for that delay and shit. There's no conviction. I think that was already up there. That was already up there. Oh, shit. Alright. Well, get this set up. Continue playing this now.
It's part of being human to ask why we exist. Questioning distinguishes us from the animals. It's to ask why we're here. So I repeat, and this is a commonplace in science. Science has nothing to say about that. As whatever it might say about mountains, it can't say what is the purpose of human life. And it's not Maggie Thatcher who is the epitome or the personification of social Darwinism. It's Hitler and Stalin.
Okay. First of all, Hitler wasn't a fucking atheist, and Stalin was just a communist dictator. His atheist state had nothing to do with that. Nice straw man. Man, so sleazy. You can't take the argument seriously, so he has to basically just use a straw man of Hitler and Stalin. Fuck off. Oh my god. Terrible argument.
It's the struggle for survival. The strong take what they can and the weak give what they must, and there's nothing to restrain them. And we've seen that in the two great atheist movements of the last century.
That's ridiculous.
That is ridiculous. You tell him, Dawkins. Fuck that guy. Don't.
Right. Let's clearly distinguish two things here. First, atheism had nothing to do with Hitler or Stalin.
Yes.
Stalin was an atheist, Hitler was not. It doesn't matter what they were with respect to atheism. They did their horrible things for entirely different reasons. Now, you are right when you say that aspects of what Hitler tried to do could be regarded as arising out of Darwinian natural selection. That's exactly why I said that I despise Darwinian natural selection as a motto for how we should live. I tried to say we should not live by Darwinian principles, but Darwinian principles explain how we got here and why we exist in the scientific sense. Now, Cardinal, you said it's part of human nature to want to ask the question why, in the sense of purpose. It may very well be part of human nature, but that doesn't make it a valid question. There are all sorts of questions which you can ask. What's funny about that? What is funny about that?
Okay, we'd like the audience not to yell out. If we can do that, that'd be great. We're going to move on.
I didn't finish, I'm sorry.
Okay, well, finish your point.
Okay.
There are lots of
Yeah, this is just kind of evolving
The
here.
question why is not necessarily a question that deserves to be answered. There are all sorts of questions that people can ask, like, what is the colour of jealousy? That's a silly question.
Exactly.
Why is a silly question? Why is a silly question? You can ask, what are the factors that led to something coming into existence? That's a sensible question. But what is the purpose of the universe is a silly question. It has no meaning.
Could I just interpose very briefly?
Very briefly.
I think it's a very poignant and real question to ask, why is there suffering?
We will be asking that question, believe it or not. This is Q&A. It's live and interactive. Tonight we're experimenting with QuandaVote, a new way for Q&A viewers to share their opinions on the issues we discuss. You can go to the QuandaVote.tv website on your smartphone, tablet or computer to vote in our very first question, and that is, does religious belief make the world a better place? Does religious belief make the world a better place? We'll report back later on your views.
All right, well, I'm just going to answer that really quick. Does religious belief make the world a better place? And I say no. Look what Islam has done. Look what Catholicism has done. Look what Christianity has done over the course of history. The 30 Years' War, the 100 Years' War, the Inquisition, the Crusades, the Ottoman Empire, Saudi Arabia, Iran. Go down the list. Go down the list, man. Religion generally does not make the world a better place. While there is a lot of good intentions within it, I mean, just over the course of history, I see a lot of wars that have broken out over this stuff, and even now to a lot of extents, especially with like the Palestinian-Israeli conflict going on there. That's another, religious conflict going on there. So I mean, to me, I just, especially with what's going on now in the world, I mean, unless there's people that try to come out and, you know, push for, like, a religion of peace, and they mean it, but I don't see that happening. So, I mean, yeah, just answering that question. So, yeah. I'll be interested to find out the results of that, though.
First, let's move on to our next question for our panel. It comes from Paul Hanrahan.
My question is for Richard Dawkins. You're on the record as saying you can't prove that God doesn't exist, and you say you're agnostic rather than atheistic. Why do you appear as the champion of atheism around the world? Why do you accept offers to appear as the champion of atheism? And why are you so evangelical in the prosecution of your cause? Isn't that a touch hypocritical and unscientific?
All right. Well, with that, it's just, I mean, he's going to, I'll let Dawkins answer kind of that last part because that's his question. But, I mean, for the first part of it, because they're not mutually exclusive, like, people can be agnostic, people can be atheist, or they can be both. And in that case, I would say Dawkins is both. He's an agnostic atheist, like I would consider myself. So, I mean, it's kind of, I mean, it's a good question because it will help explain that. But I mean, yeah, I mean, the two don't go together, but they can be added together as agnostic atheism. But yeah, I mean, yeah, they're just not mutually exclusive, but in that case, so yeah.
Yes, Richard Dawkins, I'm a bit confused about this because you just referred to yourself moments ago as being an atheist, and yet with the Archbishop of Canterbury you referred to yourself as an agnostic.
In the God delusion, I made a 7-point scale. 1 is I'm totally confident there is a God. 7 is I'm totally confident there is not a God. 6 is, to all intents and purposes, I'm an atheist. I live my life as though there is no God. But any scientist of any sense will not say that they positively can disprove the existence of anything. I cannot disprove the existence of the Easter Bunny, and so I'm agnostic about the Easter Bunny. It's in the same respect, but I'm agnostic about God. So,
what proof, by the way, would change your mind?
That's a very difficult and interesting question because, I mean, I used to think that if somehow, you know, great big, giant, 900-foot-high Jesus with a voice like Paul Robeson suddenly strode in and said, "I exist, here I am." But even that, I actually sometimes wonder whether that would...
I think you're hallucinating.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I wonder why the Cardinal said that, because you're hallucinating when... It's funny. Yeah, that's kind of funny.
I agree.
Can I just put the question to you? Could you ever provide Richard Dawkins with the sort of proof he requires to believe, scientific proof of the existence of God?
No, because I think he only accepts proof that is rooted in sense experience. In other words, he excludes the world of metaphysics, say the principle of contradiction, and he excludes the possibility of arguments that don't go against reason, but go beyond it. But could I make one little suggestion as to why Richard calls himself an atheist? Because in one of his blogs in 2002, he was discussing whether he's an agnostic or a non-theist. He said he prefers to use the term atheist because it's more explosive, it's more dynamic. You can shake people up.
Sure.
Whereas if you're just going around saying that you're an agnostic or a non-theist, it's not. These are his own words.
Well, let's let Richard.
I don't remember saying that. It wouldn't totally surprise me. It's in 2002. It's an ongoing issue. What's the best way? There is a problem with the word atheist, especially in America. I don't know whether it's true in Australia. There's a lovely woman. I'm blocking on her name because I'm jet lagged. She's Irish-American woman. Anybody help me?
There are quite a few Irish-American women. Sorry about that.
Sorry? No. Anyway, I do apologise personally to her for forgetting her name. She's an actress and she's got she did a film on how she escaped from the Roman Catholic Church, and it's a very moving film. And at the end, her mother discovered that she was an atheist, and her mother phoned her up and said, "Well, I don't mind you not believing in God, but an atheist?"
That's kind of funny. I mean, it's kind of a funny story that kind of enforces his statement there. Because, I mean, in a way, yeah, atheism is, or atheist is definitely a more explosive term, especially towards, in America, for sure. Especially if you go into really religious areas. Religion is a touchy subject. God can be used for personal thoughts or opinions. Yeah, I mean, religion in general can. I mean, because it goes, because there's, like, I mean, let's just even think about all the pastors in America, like Jeff Baker and I'm blanking on the other guy's name, but I mean there's there's so many. There's a bunch of them. Like Pat Robertson's another one. There's another one that I'm really blanking on, but dude like is like worth like over like $50 million or something like that. That's like a super church, basically. It's insane. But I mean, all these pastors that basically just Jimmy Swaggart. Yeah, I don't think he was the guy I was thinking about, but sounds like another one. But he does sound familiar to me as well. Oral Roberts. Yeah, there's another one. Yeah, I mean, just go down the line, and you see that they all just manipulate religion as a whole to essentially just a whole big scam. Basically, I mean, it's insane. And the funny thing about Baker is he sells these fucking apocalyptic buckets. Like, what the fuck? I mean, he's kind of a meme. I kind of like Baker, only the fact that I can make fun of his apocalypse buckets. Apocalypse buckets. Like, what the fuck, dude? Oh my god.
Her name's Julia Sweeney, so it's suddenly come back to me. I strongly recommend that. Now, the point is that the word atheist, unlike just simply not believing in God, has bad connotations. And so, to some extent, people have wished to depart from that and change the name to non-theist or secularist or non-believer. And I waver back and forth as to what's the best name to use. I sometimes call myself an atheist, sometimes a non-theist, and sometimes just a non-believer.
George Pell, can I just come back to you on this question of the existence of God? Why would God randomly decide to provide proof of his existence to a small group of Jews 2,000 years ago and not subsequently provide any proof after that?
Well, I don't think there's ever been any scientific proof. I don't believe God does anything randomly, although he might set up a system which works apparently through,
What? Like, what? You're saying that he doesn't work randomly, but you don't know what he's going to do, and you have to predict what he might do. Doesn't that mean he's going to work kind of randomly? He's kind of contradicting himself really badly here. Really badly. Oh my god. This guy's so silly. This guy's really silly.
Through chance, through random. But if you want to get somebody...
And he looks like a younger, like, Palpatine, like shortly before Palpatine got fucked up, but he, like, ate, like, McDonald's for, like, 2 weeks. I mean, this is what this guy looks like. Here, I might as well pull what this, Catholic guy looks like here. Well, I'm dropping shit now. But that's what he looks like. He looks like a Sith Lord. That's what's so crazy about, like, I like to look at, like, some of the historical pictures of, like, popes and religious figures, and they all just look like different versions of Sith Lords. It's kind of like, damn, crazy fashion trends in, like, the Catholic Church. It's like, what the fuck?
If you want something done, you've got to ask somebody. It's no good, say, my asking everyone in the congregation, will you do something?
Doing some stretches.
Normally you go to a busy person because you know they'll do it. And so for some extraordinary reason, God chose the Jews. They weren't intellectually the equal of either the Egyptians.
So for some, you're just saying for some reason God chose the Jews because they were something. This guy is just like, I swear, he's making up his argument as he goes along. It's like this is getting annoying.
or the
Intellectually?
intellectually, morally.
How can you know intellectually?
Because you see the fruits of their civilization. Egypt was the great power for thousands of years before Christianity. Persia was a great power. Chaldea. The poor little Jewish people, they were originally shepherds.
The poor little Jewish people. He just looks at him as like so puny. What the I mean, this guy is just a character, man. He's a character.
They were stuck. They're still stuck.
But that's
between
not,
these great
that's not a
powers.
reflection of your intellectual capacity, is it, whether or not you're a shepherd?
He just is like, fuck. Well, your argument's not... Like, your argument's falling apart, man. I mean, this Cardinal's argument's really falling apart here. Like, even I don't even know how to, like, try to debunk it, because he just sounds like he's just fumbling on his own words in his own argument. I mean, it's just kind of... It's just more funny / sad that he's just kind of doing it. So I'm just gonna... It's just kind of funny and just kind of let it go on.
Well... no, it's not, but it's a recognition, it is a reflection of your intellectual development. Really? Like many people are very, very clever. And
alright, guys, so if you want to be intellectually superior, we're just going to herd sheep. We're going to be shepherds, guys. That's how you do it. We develop our intellect by herding sheep and other animals as shepherds. What are you doing, dude? That's not a good argument, man. You're not winning anyone over, honestly. That's not me at least. Like, oh my lord, that's ridiculousness.
Not highly intellectual, but my point is...
So can I just interrupt? Are you including Jesus in that, who obviously was Jewish and was of that community?
Exactly.
So intellectually not up to it?
Well, that's a nice try, Tony.
It was a very great try.
The people, in terms of sophistication, the Psalms are remarkable. In terms of their buildings and that sort of thing, they don't compare with the great powers. But Jesus came not as a philosopher to the elite. He came to the poor and the battlers. And for some reason, he chose a very difficult, but actually they are now an intellectually elite, because over the centuries they've been pushed out of every other form of work. Jesus, I think, is the greatest, son of God, but leaving that aside, the greatest man that ever lived. So I've got a great admiration for the Jews, but we don't need to exaggerate their contribution in their early days.
All right, you're watching Q&A. Remember, you can send your web or video questions to our website. Address.
Religion is used by creationists as a how-to book for Manuel. Okay, I'm sorry I'm blanking on that word, but I think I know what you're trying to say. Creation and being, while lately I tend to follow the feeling that God is really just energy with no human connections. Yeah, like, even though I do consider myself agnostic, like, I do feel like I do still call myself spiritual, too. Which I do believe there is, like, a life energy, but I mean, I don't really have, because we can't really comprehend this, this life energy, because I mean, there is like a like, for example, my cat here, like I have, like, there's like a connection, with like my cat, with like that particular type of thing, and and like a bond essentially. So I mean, I can't really, like, it's something that I just have a feeling about, or it's just like, it's something I can't really explain other than simply. So I mean, spiritually, I'm spiritually agnostic atheist. So I mean, the agnostic part of me is the more spiritual side, essentially, because I don't know, but if I were to give a guess, it'll be more like this energy of a sort, or just at best malevolent, like, force of some kind. But I wouldn't say he's like this actual character figure. But I mean, yeah, I mean that's kind of like my view on that. Energy creates energy without human attributes. Yeah, I mean, And essentially that's how the Big Bang Theory is essentially with. Like, there was just this little ball, then an explosion of energy. I mean, there's actually going to be a point here I get into, because they're going to bring it up. And I actually pulled aside a book that I want to read the very first chapter of, because which will actually be the first book reading, I think, or at least a little segment of book reading that I'll be doing it on stream. But it gets more into the point of the universe, essentially, and they do get into it. I'm gonna try to see if I can skip this fucking little thing that they do here. It's annoying. There we go.
Question for Richard Dawkins. The Big Bangers believe.
Here we go.
That once there was
now.
nothing, then suddenly, poof, the universe was created from a Big Bang. If I have nothing in the palm of my hand, close my fingers, speak the word bang, then open my fingers again, still I find there is nothing there. I ask you to explain to us in layman's terms how it is that something as enormous as the universes came from nothing.
I paused right at the... Okay. I just gotta show Dawkins' face, because I think this sums up how he feels about it. Look at this. Just perfect pause. Just like, what the... He's just like, got this feeling of, what the fuck am I dealing with here? And I agree with that. It's like ridiculous. I'm just checking battery power. Oh, nice. I was at 20%, and it only went down to 18%. Sweet. Sweet. We can go on for a little longer. Actually getting by not too badly. It's probably going to be like a 2-hour stream, but hell. I mean, I was kind of expecting that, considering that this is a 1-hour stream here, video here. But yeah, so I mean, I'll let Dawkins get into it, and then I'll bring it up. Which is actually the book I'll be going through is Neil deGrasse Tyson's book, actually, Astrophysics for People in a Hurry. Great book, by the way. I've read. Where I'm actually at is at like page 166, but I marked the first chapter right off the bat just so I can read that. But anyway, let's go on.
Richard Dawkins.
Well, obviously you're not a physicist.
You're definitely not. Because guess what? There's at least proof of a bang of some sort, or at least a center point of the beginning, because there's cosmic background radiation. And also, I mean, the first chapter here does go into explanation of what was created in this sense. So anyway, let's continue here. I mean, we still don't know how or if the Big Bang happened. Like, we don't know how it happened, but we can at least prove that there is evidence for it. So, because of this cosmic background radiation. So I mean, you're not a physicist, dude. So ask a physicist. Better yet, an astrophysicist.
And nor am I. And I am delighted to say that during my time in Australia, I shall be having a number of conversations, public conversations, with my colleague Lawrence Krauss, including one in the Sydney Opera House later, I think it's next week. And he's written a book on exactly that topic of how you can get something from nothing, and I shall be questioning him about that. Of course it's counterintuitive that you can get something from nothing. Of course common sense doesn't allow you to get something from nothing. That's why it's interesting. It's got to be interesting in order to give rise to the universe at all. Something pretty mysterious had to give rise to the origin of the universe. Now, if you want to replace a physical explanation by an intelligent God, that's an even worse explanation. It's an even more difficult explanation. What scientists are trying to do is to explain how you can get not just something, but the immense complexity of the world, of the universe, and of life. And science is making a pretty good fist of doing that. Life is now completely solved, barring the details. That was Darwin's contribution and Darwin's successors. Physicists are still working on the origin of the cosmos. Among them is Lawrence Krauss, whom I shall be talking to next week. Now, It is very mysterious how the universe came into being. It's a deeply mysterious and interesting question.
And can I just interrupt? It's an old question, a very old question. Thomas Aquinas in the 13th century was asking the same question. He said there must have been a time when no physical things existed, but something can't come from nothing. That was his view. It's just repeated by us.
Something can come from nothing, and that's what physicists are now telling us. I could give you, you asked me to give you a layman's interpretation. It would be a very, very layman's interpretation. When you have matter and antimatter and you put them together, they cancel each other out and give rise to nothing. What Lawrence Krauss is now suggesting is that if you start with nothing, the process can go into reverse and produce matter and antimatter. The theory is still being worked out. It's a very difficult theory, mathematical theory. I'm not qualified to answer the question, but what I am sure about is that it most certainly is not solved by postulating an intelligence, a creative intelligence, who raises even bigger questions of his own existence. That certainly is not going to be the answer, whatever else is.
George Bell.
All right, well, at least there's like some theory for it, because I mean, again, this first chapter does go into a lot of immense detail of what possibly were happening at this course. So yeah, here's just I'm just gonna read, just I don't know how far in, but it's probably just these first couple paragraphs. So just here's what chapter 1 is. In the beginning, nearly 14 billion years ago, all the space and all the matter and all the energy of the known universe was contained in a volume less than 1/trillionth the size of a period that ends in this sentence. That's very small, very, very small dot. Conditions were so hot, the basic forces of nature that collectively describe the universe were unified. Through still unknown how it came into existence, this sub-pinpoint size cosmos could only expand rapidly in what today we call the Big Bang. Einstein's general theory relativity my bad, put forth in 1916, give us our modern understanding of gravity, which is in the compressance of matter and energy that curves the fabric of space and time surrounding it. In the 1920s, quantum mechanics would be discovered, providing our modern account for all that is small, molecules, atoms, and subatomic particles. But these two understandings of nature are formally incapable of one another, which sets physicists off on a race to blend the theory of small with the theory of the large into a single and coherent theory of quantum gravity. Although we haven't yet reached the finish line, we know exactly where the high hurdles are. One of them is during the Planck era. Oh, lost my set. Of the early universe. That is the interval of time from t equals 0 up to t equals to the power negative 43 seconds. 1/10 million trillion trillionths of a second. That's a very incomprehensible short amount of time. Just holy shit. You can see how complex that really is. I mean, I'll just read on just a little bit more here. After the beginning and before the universe grew to 10 to the negative power 333 meters, or 100 billion trillion trillionths of a meter across. I don't even know how big that is. I don't even... that's meh. I think. I don't know. So small. The German physicist Max Planck, after whom these unimaginably small quantities are named, introduced the idea of quantized energy in 1900 and is generally credited as the father of quantum mechanics. So, I mean, you can see how complex this gets into. I mean, and this gets so much more immense into detail about a lot of how the origins, or at least the beginnings of the Big Bang were formatted. What the fuck? But, yeah, I mean... So, it would be really interesting to see what his counter-argument is, because I'm pretty sure he has no understanding of that. I mean, I have a far better understanding of it just because I have a book about it. And a book about, essentially, astrophysics for people in a hurry, because I read that very often. I love the book. It's such a great book. I recommend you get it on eBay, because it's like $5 there. It's such a worthwhile spend. I mean, the most you'll probably spend is like $8, but it's so worth it. It's a very good book. Check it out.
But the trouble, well, there are many troubles with Richard's teachings. But a fundamental one is that he dumbs down God and he soups up nothing.
What? I'm not even going to try.
He continually talks as though God is some sort of upmarket figure within space and time. Now, from 450, 500 BC, where with the Greek philosophers, God is outside space and time. God is necessary, self-sufficient, uncaused, unconditioned. That's the hypothesis you've got to wrestle with. The second thing is that Krauss says nothing about...
No, he doesn't, because there's multiple other different interpretations and such.
The Big Bang coming out of nothing. Admittedly, he comes clean on about 6 pages from the end of his book, and I don't know whether Richard has read it that far because he gave it a foreword. What he says is what Richard is describing as nothing is a sort of a mixture of particles and perhaps a vacuum with electromagnetic forces working on it. That's what Krauss is talking about under the heading of nothing. And there's a very good review of this in the New York Times. Not a pro-religious paper at all, where Krauss is absolutely denied and demolished, although especially by his supporters claiming that he says things come out of nothing. He doesn't say that.
It's a matter,
you can quickly respond to that.
You can dispute exactly what's meant by nothing, but whatever it is, it's very, very simple. And why is that funny?
Well, I think it's a bit funny to be trying to define nothing.
No, it's actually not funny because this is supposed to be an intellectual debate. So instead of encouraging it and doing subtle little attacks like you have been doing and putting up straw mans like a smear merchant, why don't you actually just intellectually be honest and come forward with your arguments? Like, for fuck's sake, dude.
Can I put that to you as a question? Is it equally...
The audience is actually annoying the fuck out of me because they laugh a lot.
Feasible, since you can't prove the existence of God, that the nothing you're talking about is in fact some creative force?
If you talk about a God who is a creative intelligence, then that is something very complicated and very improbable, and something that requires explaining in its own right. The nothing that Lawrence Krauss is talking about, whether or not it's what a naive person would conceive as nothing, or what a sophisticated physicist would consider to be nothing, it is going to be something much, much simpler than a creative intelligence. We are struggling, we're all struggling, scientists are struggling, to explain how we get the fantastic order and complexity of the universe out of very simple and therefore easy to understand, easy to explain beginnings. Lawrence Krauss calls the substrate of his explanation nothing. It's possible to dispute whether nothing is quite the right word, but whatever it is very, very simple, and therefore is a worthy premise for an explanation. Whereas a God, a creative intelligence, is not a worthy substrate for an explanation, because it is already something very complicated. And it's no good invoking Thomas Aquinas and saying that God is defined as outside time and space. That's just a cop-out. That's just an evasion of the responsibility to explain.
Intellectually dishonest.
Just setting out what you want to prove before you've even started.
Okay, let's move on to a question. Let's move on to a question on
Turn it out a little bit.
For Cardinal Post.
But yeah, that's being intellectually dishonest.
As a young Catholic scientist, I'd like to ask the Cardinal to clarify the Roman Catholic Church's position on evolution and comment on whether the dichotomy between science and religion is in fact real.
That's a very interesting thing she did for herself. She's a Catholic scientist. Okay. We're trying to put energy into the confines of the human brain. Well, I mean, our human brain is essentially using a form, I won't say like literally a form of energy, but it has its, because I mean we're, you know, as humans we don't even understand our own brain, you know, I mean, because I mean our sentience comes from it, but yet it's so, you know, it's really hard to, it's a struggle to get, you know, my head wrapped around my own head. I'm trying to get my head wrapped around my head. I mean, because the brain is such a fascinating and far complex organ that, you know, we still don't even fully understand. So I mean, but yeah, I mean, religion especially, I mean, I do find to be quite a cop-out, because it's like, it's like, in a way, it's like you don't appreciate the complexity of it, and you don't want to, like, try to just learn about it. I mean, and discover what it truly means, you know, even if it doesn't get into your lifetime, at least you put in that work for future generations to continue on upon it with predecessors. So, I mean, this guy is just really intellectually dishonest. I mean, Catholic Church always has been. I mean, look at the Pope right now. I mean, he's doing a lot. He's saying a lot of things that really contradict what the actual church believes. It's getting kind of funny. He kind of basically said hell was bullshit a while back, and now he's saying God made you like that, and God loves you for gays. He replied on an email to someone who's gay. So I mean, it's just like, okay, he's definitely the most liberal pope out of all of them. It's just like baby steps, dude. Just congratulations. No one gives a fuck. You're behind, dude. Get up. Come on, run. You gotta make a little jog going. I mean, you might need to start a marathon. So I mean, it's just like, I mean, just think about how corrupt in general, I mean, these organizations are too. Not just like, you know, these random bumfuck pastors who get millions of bucks because a bunch of idiots essentially just, you know, send them money or whatever because, oh, you know, they're the word. And I mean, just think about how corrupt the Catholic Church is, and just how, you know, dark it really can essentially get. I mean, you know, at some point I might do Ignarism, just kind of on like I might do like, maybe not Ignarism, but like maybe a different thing on like where we talk about some history and stuff, because I would really love to go and delve into history streams. There was never a hell except by a place humans insignificant to control followers. Yeah, I mean, you know, the most realistic, you know, essence of what will happen is just the state of non-existence, and we've essentially, like, I mean, I obviously can't remember the state of non-existence, but, you know, when I sleep and like I have dreams, sometimes it's this weird blend of like I'm dreaming in a non-state of consciousness, you know what I mean? It's a weird, like, it's kind of like you're delving into dream worlds, but you're like starting to get your it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of hard to explain in that. Like I kind of experience that sometimes when I start dreaming. But I can kind of grasp what that is, and it's just literally just nothing, you know? I mean, so that's essentially what would be like the most real scenario, but I mean, I doubt there's definitely going to be no hell where you're essentially burning an eternal hellfire or whatever hell have you be there. I mean, you know, that just doesn't make sense. I mean, because why would that be cast upon someone for some past wrongdoings that they may have done? I mean, it really just doesn't make sense. I mean, it just seems very immoral in a sense, honestly.
Well, science and religion are two different activities, and in the Catholic Church, you can believe to some extent what you like about evolution. I think Darwin made a great contribution. I remember talking with Julius Kornberg, a very distinguished biologist, and he's worked with ants for years. And he said, you know, he's managed to change them by changing the conditions. But there are a number of things that evolution doesn't explain. Darwin realized that. Darwin was a theist because he said he couldn't believe.
Keyword theist. That's the key word. He didn't believe in Catholicism. He didn't believe in Christianity. He had his own interpretation, which is theism. Which also you can say deist as well. Theism. I mean, those two really blend in together because that's essentially your own interpretation of what God is. And it's, from what you sound like, that's essentially what you sound like, what you probably consider yourself as a deist. I mean, because if you have a feeling it's more like an energy, I mean, that's essentially your own interpretation. Like, you sound, because that's what it sounds like, a spiritual deist, essentially. That's how I would probably call yourself. But I mean, I don't know what specifically you call yourself, but I mean, just based off what you told me, that's what it sounds like. But anyway, I mean, digressing on that, I mean, wow, I had a really bad blank right there. What the fuck? Whoa, that was like, what the fuck? Oh my god. Well, it is late, but hey, we'll keep going. I'm going till the end.
The immense cosmos and all the beautiful things in the world came about either by chance or out of necessity. He said, I have to be ranked as a theist. Now,
that's just not true.
Excuse me,
it's just not true.
It's on page 92 of his autobiography. Go and have a look.
I'm a Roman Catholic with serious issues.
Can I just bring you, in a sense, to the point of the question? Do you accept that humans evolved from apes?
Yeah, probably.
Well, quite an interesting. Well, this is quite an interesting subject video, then.
Probably.
Why from Neanderthals?
Well, who else would you suggest?
What am I missing?
Neanderthals were our cousins. We're not descended from them, and we're both descended from.
Yeah, we are descendants from a common ancestor. We didn't literally come from them. They're a distant cousin who evolved from a common ancestor down the line. I mean, like, I'm getting, like, I really have an issue with, like, the religious intellectuals, essentially. Like, this guy will consider himself this cardinal, which I'm so glad he's not wearing his weird fancy cardinal suit. He's just wearing some typical pastor suit. But he still looks like a Sith Lord. But I mean, like, if they seriously can't at least look at what evolution is about, regardless if they agree or disagree with it, and look through and learn about what it's about at least, you know, before they start making statements of like, oh, well, you know, you descended from a Neanderthal and monkeys. It's like, no, we didn't. They evolved from a common ancestor down the line where we descended from them as well. Just go down the line of the evolutionary train. I mean, it might take a while, but eventually it gets there. I mean, it's just basic evolution right there. I mean, it just takes like the quick look through what evolution is and like look at our evolutionary tree down the line and see where they branch off. So it's a really ridiculous argument that he's making because it's just easily debunkable.
These
Star Wars on your brain.
Where will I find a Neanderthal today if they're my cousins?
They're not extant, they're extinct.
What? Wow, what a strong... Was that... that's a false equivalence is what he's pulling there. It's like a straw manning false equivalence. It's like a mixture of the both. Like, it's not literally your cousin, you dipshit. It's a distant evolutionary cousin. Oh my god. And they're extinct, by the way. And we have some of their genes because some people have like 1% of Neanderthal in them. And some people have like 2%. So, I mean, it's shut up about it. Oh my god. I can't wait to see what this goes down towards.
Exactly, that's my point.
Your point is that because they're not... that because they're extant, they can't be our cousins.
I really am not much fussed.
What?
That's clear.
Something in the evolutionary story seems to have come before humans. A lot of people say it's Neanderthals.
Can we say this?
Holy fuck, that guy had a hook nose like a motherfucker, holy shit.
So let me put this to you as a
There's a
question.
guy in the audience who had like the hookiest of hook noses.
Scale was a soul imparted to the humans from God.
Look, a soul isn't, it's not like putting a spot of gin in a tonic.
What?
The soul is the principle of life. So whenever there was a principle of life that could question, that could be open to awe, that was able to communicate, then we had the first human. Now, we believe that the first humans developed in South Africa. I'm not quite sure how long ago, and that all the...
Okay, well, I guess he kind of read it, but you're still kind of wrong, because I think it's more Central Africa, if I remember right. Because if you look at the mitochondria, because the mitochondria is only in your cells, like every cell has mitochondria, which is like this little itty-bitty bacteria in your cell, that only comes from the mother. So if you trace down the mitochondria DNA all the way back to its original state, back to your like first forms of humans, Lucy, I believe, I think they call it, or call her, or these first four strands, because it delves down to these first four. So you're at least kind of right, but man, it is such a vague explanation of it, and still wrong-ish. I mean, I really 100% don't know if it's in more Central Africa, but it's in that Central to Southern African region, but it's not like literally South Africa. Like what?
Humans have developed from that. We know most about that. There aren't remains. We know most about that because of the drawings they left on the on walls and caves and that sort of thing. No such thing from Neanderthals.
Because they went extinct, and also Homo sapiens and Neanderthals fought over shit, and the Homo sapiens won, basically. So, yeah. I mean, also their ancient cultures at the time were probably way different, too. Like, Homo sapiens probably were able to develop these forms of visual art and like a form of storytelling, while Neanderthals probably have a different way. So the point is kind of mute.
We can't say exactly when they were the first human, but we have to say if there are humans, there must have been the first one. It might have been equal first, but if there is a progression, they've got to be first.
So are you talking about a kind of Garden of Eden scenario with an actual Adam and Eve?
Well, what Adam and Eve terms, what do they mean? Life and earth. It's like every man. That's a beautiful, sophisticated, mythological account. It's not science, but it's there to tell us the two or three.
Wow, so you're admitting that the Bible's bullshit?
Things. First of all,
I love these little Freudian little things that he doesn't know he's saying that just kind of debunks everything he's saying. It's just, like he said it once already, this is the second time. It's just kind of funny. He's basically saying, using just the example of the Adam and Eve specifically, that it's not science, well, duh, the Bible never really was, and that it's mythological in a sense. Well, good on you for admitting that Genesis is mythological. Just admit the rest of it is. I mean, or at least the obviously mythological points. I mean, because I don't know. It's just like, come on.
To the world and the universe. Yeah, secondly, that the key to the whole of the universe, the really significant thing, are humans. And thirdly, it's a very sophisticated mythology to try to explain the evil and the suffering.
But it isn't a literal truth. You shouldn't see it in any way as being a historical or literal truth.
It's certainly not a scientific truth, and It's a religious story told for religious purposes.
And just quickly, because
well, congratulations on admitting that.
These kind of stories. I mean,
thank you.
Is there a point where you
actually
distinguish between metaphor and reality? For example, Moses receiving the Ten Commandments inscribed directly by God on a mountain.
I'm not sure that the Old Testament says that God inscribed the Ten Commandments, but leaving that aside, it's difficult to know how exactly that worked. But Moses was a great man. There was a great encounter with the divine. Actually, with Moses,
because of a burning bush, and I wonder what that burning bush was. I can only say it was either marijuana or some type of plant that had DMT in it. Because there's so many plants in this world that have DMT. There's at least 1,000 plants with DMT. So, I mean, yeah. He sounded like he was having a nice little trip. And he was, having a little psychedelic adventure. So, I think anyone with drug experience will easily find that out. And just be like, wow, okay. Even my religious uncle who I've talked about before, even he kind of gets that. I mean, that sounds like he was having a trip and he was using that experience to basically write these 10 Commandments, essentially. So, I mean, it's pretty funny that he left the burning bush out, because he probably knew that maybe it could have been used as a rebuttal.
we get the
Because I would have just brought it up anyway, because I did.
That enables us to come together with the Greeks with reason, because Moses said, who will I tell the Egyptians? And he said, tell that my name is I am who I am.
Okay, I'm going to bring Richard Dawkins back in here.
What? I don't even know what he was saying. I just said, I am who I am. And I'm like, wait, what? What are you even saying? I don't even know.
Yeah, because we've moved from evolution, obviously, to the biblical versions of it. Your response?
Well, I'm curious to know if Adam and Eve never existed, where did original sin come from? But I also would like to clarify the point about whether there ever was a first human.
I didn't even bring that up.
And puzzling question.
Good rebuttal.
We know that the previous species from which we're descended is probably Homo erectus, and before that some sort of Australopithecine. But there never was a last Homo erectus who gave birth to the first Homo sapiens. Every creature ever born belonged to the same species as its parents. The process of evolution is so gradual that you can never say, aha, now suddenly we have the first human. It was always a case of just a slightly different from the previous generation. That's a scientific point, which I think is quite interesting. I'm not sure if it has theological significance, except that I think successive popes have tried to suggest that the soul did indeed get added, rather like gin to tonic, at some particular point during evolution. At some point in evolution, there was no soul, and then later there was one. So it is quite an interesting question to ask. Now we have rather a good fossil record from Africa of the descent of humans, from Australopithecines to various species of Homo, perhaps Homo habilis, perhaps Homo erectus, then archaic Homo sapiens, and then modern Homo sapiens. At what point did the soul get injected? And what does the idea of original sin mean if Adam and Eve never existed?
I'll just quickly let you respond to that.
Well, I mean, God wasn't running around giving injections. And if there is no first person, where did
the soul come from then?
The soul is the principle of life. But there are animal souls. All living things have some principle of life. So an animal has a principle of life. A human has a soul, a principle of life, which is immensely more sophisticated. We even have a voice box, which is one of the great miracles.
So does a lot of other animals, in a sense.
To one another,
how do you think cats and dogs bark meow?
I'm pleased we're not grunting tonight. Let's move along. You can, by the way, don't forget you can still vote at...
I'm pleased we're not grunting tonight. Well, sounds like it, honestly.
TV, I should say, on the question, does religious belief make the world a better place? Over 15,000 viewers.
Wow. So, To the question, does religious belief make the world a better place? Yes is 24%, no is 76%. I wonder what a lot of people's explanations were for that.
And we'll check before the end of the program for the final results. Our next question for Professor Dawkins and Cardinal Pell is a video.
Round around trying to place the meaning of human attributes to cosmic energy.
Victoria.
My question is for George Pell. George, as a climate change skeptic, you demand a very high standard of evidence to support the hypothesis that global warming has an anthropogenic cause. My question is, why then?
He's just going to deny it anyway because there's mountains of evidence.
And do you not demand the same standard of evidence for the existence of God?
I'm very, very happy to answer that. First of all, I'm not a skeptic about climate change. I grew up in Ballarat. The weather was always shy. I worked for years in Melbourne. If you don't like the weather in Melbourne, wait 20 minutes.
Weather is different than climate, by the way, so what's your point?
Think of all the nonsense people like Flannery told us. We had years of drought here, and now we're coping with flood.
So you're a skeptic about global warming leading to climate change?
I'm skeptical about the human contribution to dangerous climate change.
Really? So why is fracking so harmful to the Midwest? Why does Flint, Michigan have lead in its water? Why do oil pipelines leak constantly and are obsolete? Why is there mass pollution in the air where like about 90% of the world has polluted air? Why is there fossil fuel industries buying off of the government and, you know, profitizing off of oil production, which is very harmful to the environment? Can you answer that? Because that's very dangerous human contributions that you're leaving out, buddy. And there's more. There's far more than that. Not to mention the trash that we leave around.
I think that is not established.
And is that because you're skeptical?
So intellectually dishonest here. So dishonest. Oh my god. Taking a hit because this pisses me off. Oh my god. When it comes to the environment, I don't want to go on a rant about that because if I continue, I will. So I'm gonna just play this and take this and shut myself up. Because oh boy, I will go.
About scientific consensus, and is that partly driven
no.
by what scientists believe about religion?
No, it's got nothing to do with it. On the weather question, I go on the evidence. When you come
there
to
was no other question.
God,
no.
That is not a scientific question. The scientists concede that. It is a question that is open, I believe, to reason. You have to reason about the facts of science. Ask whether you believe that the suggestion that random selection is sufficient, and also most evolutionary biologists today don't believe that.
Don't believe what?
They don't believe in random, so this crude fundamentalist version of random selection that you propose.
I do not propose it, and I strongly deny that evolution is random selection. Evolution is non-random selection.
Oh, so there's a purpose to it, is there?
No.
Could you explain what non-random means?
Yes, of course I could. It's my life's work.
It's such a hard thing to say in a kid in brief.
There's random genetic variation and non-random survival and a non-random reproduction, which is why, as the generations go by, animals get better at doing what they do. That is quintessentially non-random. It does not mean there's a purpose in the sense of a human purpose, in the sense of a guiding principle which is thought up in advance. With hindsight, you can say something like a bird's wing looks as though it has a purpose. A human eye looks as though it has a purpose, but it has come about through the process of non-random natural selection. There is no purpose in the human sense. There's a kind of pseudo-purpose, but it's not a purpose in the human sense of conscious guiding. But above all, I must stress that Darwinian evolution is a non-random process. One of the biggest misunderstandings, which I'm sorry to say the Cardinal's just perpetrated, is that evolution is a random process. It is the opposite of a random.
Yeah, by the way, just to clarify, there are random processes, but it's not because of evolution, it's because of mutation. Like genetic defects like for example, Down syndrome is just one example amongst many others. Dwarfism is another one. I mean, go down the line, and I mean, that's a random genetic mutation, and so there. I kind of wish Dawkins was able to clarify that point before delving into this, because evolution definitely does not have a random process to it, but genetic mutations is a random process that does occur down these evolutionary lines. So this doesn't correlate towards evolution, but it happens. These genetic mutations happen, which are random. So, I mean, I wish he did clarify that a little bit, but overall, yeah, I mean, evolution is not a random process, and this really irks me when these pastors, cardinals, or popes, or whatever, religious intellectuals of any form, just don't have any understanding what evolution is and can't bring themselves to study it, even if they disagree with it, just to understand it so they can at least know what they're talking about before they start going into it about why they disagree with it. So, I mean, they will probably still lose in the end because, I mean, evolution has relatively been kind of a proven thing. So, I mean, but they can try at least. They can try if they at least study it. Then at least then they will be intellectually honest about it.
The process.
They will be intellectually honest. Say hello.
Yes, that is fascinating, because most evolutionary biologists today believe that the animal world is developing according to patterns, which when we started to know more and more about them. And
are you referring to intelligent design?
No, I'm not. I'm leaving that right to one side. I
Do you believe in intelligent design?
I believe
that there's an intelligent designer.
I believe God is intelligent.
No, but
how we work.
It's obviously a loaded question. But you believe in
Quit doing mental gymnastics and just answer the fucking question.
Intelligent design. Well, an intelligent designer.
It all depends what you mean. I believe God created the world.
It's pretty it's straightforward, dude. Oh my God.
I'm not entirely sure how it works out scientifically. But I wonder, whether Richard believes that the patterns we see in nature, whether they are real or whether they're an illusion.
I'm going to leave that question.
They are real.
All right. Okay. That's a quick answer. Let's go to our next question. Here's a video. It comes from Matthew Thompson in Toowong, Victoria.
I'm an atheist. What do you think will happen when I die, and how do you know?
Pretty straightforward.
You ought to be an authority on this, I imagine.
Well, I know from the Christian point of view, God loves everybody, that every genuine motion towards the truth is a motion towards God, and when an atheist dies, like everybody else, they'll be judged on the extent to which they have moved towards goodness and truth and beauty. But in the Christian view, God loves everyone except those who turn their back on him through evil acts.
So atheism not an evil act?
No, not well. No, in most cases it's not. So many honest atheists.
I guess to get to the point of the question, I suppose we may be having a little wager here, but is it possible for an atheist to go to heaven?
Well, it's not my business.
No, but you're the only
Let's answer the question.
Here.
I would say certainly. Yeah. Certainly.
And just on the subject of heaven, if we can, what is your own concept of what heaven is?
Well, even St. Paul was severely agnostic, but one way in which the Christians differ from the Greeks believed in the immortality of the soul. We Christians believe with one section of the Jewish people in the resurrection of the body. So in some sense we will be there as continuing persons, in some with a new heaven and a new earth, with all the good things that we've done will be incorporated into the new heaven and new earth. How it'll work out I don't know, because I think physically and morally and intellectually we're at our peak at different stages in our life. How it'll work out I've got no idea, but that's the general outline of Christian teaching.
You believe, you think about it as a kind of collection of individual souls. In fact, obviously billions and billions of individual souls with their own personality existing in some galactic space.
I think that's a traditional, well, it's certainly the traditional Christian view. It's the view that I accept, and it's also the view of some of the Jews.
Richard Dawkins.
Well, the answer to the question of what's going to happen when we die depends whether we're buried, cremated, or give our bodies to science.
If you're actually an agnostic and you keep aside this small portion of your brain for subsequent proof, I mean, you might get presented with that proof when you die.
The brain is what we do our thinking with. The brain is going to rot. That's all there is to it. I'm intrigued by the Cardinals saying that the Christians believe you're going to be resurrected in the body. I mean, that's an astonishing idea, and I don't believe you really mean that. And I think, just as I don't believe you really mean that the wafer turns into the body of Christ, you must mean body in some rather special sense.
Mr. Dawkins, I don't say things I don't mean.
Well, then what do you mean?
Yeah, well, you mean that because you've been doing a lot of weird things where you don't mean what you
I've
probably
just
mean.
explained what the bodily resurrection means to the extent that I can understand it. I certainly believe that when the words of consecration are uttered, that they become the body and blood of Christ. Now, I've had a little kid come up to me when that was explained and say, can I have a look in the chalice to see if it's turned to blood? Of course it hasn't. We don't believe that. It's not against reason. I believe it because I believe the man who told us that was also the Son of God. He says, this is my body, this is my blood. And I'd much prefer to listen to him and take his word than yours.
Well, then you're just not believing in a sense of reality. I mean, I've already kind of went into it. I mean, because like the most realistic plausibility is that you're just going to go into say non-existence in your body, depending on what you do with it. It's either going to be cremated, buried, or given to science. And, you know, and from there, who knows, you know? And that's why, you know, agnosticism is important, because we generally don't know in a sentient sense what happens, but at least we can know what in a realistic sense is going to happen to our bodies afterwards. So it's just ridiculous, man. I mean, you're just not going to accept reality at that point. Like, dude, are you giving up in this debate? We are about 15 minutes, we got about 15 minutes left, so we're almost done here. But yeah, it's pretty interesting debate. I've actually really enjoyed it a lot. I haven't seen this yet. At least not yet fully.
But other Christian denominations are quite happy to take that as a symbolic, metaphorical meaning. Catholics take it as a literal meaning, and I take it. I'm trying to be charitable by trying to suggest that it's that same sense in which you say that the body is resurrected, because the body is certainly not resurrected in terms of the cell, the protoplasm, the proteins, the DNA. That doesn't happen any more than the wafer turns into that. You're right when you said that to the child. So you do not mean that the wafer turns into the body in any sense in which normal English language usage would understand. You mean it in some other sense, and I take it it's that same sense that the body is resurrected.
Well, can I ask you whether you do mean it in a metaphorical sense, in the same way that you believe Adam and Eve are metaphorical creatures?
I don't. I follow it. I understand it. According to a system of metaphysics, it was spelled out by the Greeks before Christ came, which we've adopted. And that is, there's a substance which is the core of a being, and it is revealed to us through what are called accidents. Now, I believe that the core of the bean becomes the bread, becomes the body and blood of Christ. It continues to look exactly as it was. We believe that in the Catholic Church. Now, I know you're a cultural Anglican, and we can't blame the Anglican.
I'm also a rationalist. I use English is my native language. The wafer does not become the body of anybody in the English language.
No, I think we've resolved that you both disagree on this point rather substantially. Let's go to our next question, which is from Michael Matty.
Is it okay to tell a child that God doesn't exist?
Richard Dawkins.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly fine.
I think it's okay to tell a child the truth. But I would prefer to encourage a child to make up her own mind and to think about the evidence and to believe things when there is evidence. What I think is not okay, what I think is deeply immoral, is to tell a child that when she dies, if she's not good, she's going to go to hell. That seems to me to be mental child abuse and an utter disgrace.
I remember when I was in England, we were preparing some young English boys.
Oh, well, that doesn't sound like a good statement out of context there, Cardinal. Just to mention that your Catholic Church is pretty pedophilic-ridden. Oh, they even got it.
Thank you. Preparing them for First Communion. And they were very patriotic young lads.
Oh, I bet.
One of them announced very breezily to me that he didn't believe in hell. And I mean, certainly the idea of any child being sent to hell, I agree that is grotesque, and that's not the Christian God. But anyhow, this kid, I said simply, Hitler. You think Hitler might be in hell? Started the Second World War, caused the death of 50 million? Or would you prefer a system where Hitler got away with it for free? Anyhow, the little kid was quite patriotic, and he realised hell was in with a chance if Hitler was going to go there.
What about a system where he was simply obliterated and didn't exist anymore?
Well, he would have got away with too much as far as I'm concerned.
So you actually prefer the idea of hell as a place of punishment but for who? Where do you draw the line? Do unbelievers go to hell?
No. The only people, I hope nobody's in hell. We Catholics generally believe that there is a hell. I hope nobody's there. I certainly believe in a place of purification. I think it'll be like getting up in the morning, and you throw the curtains back, the light is just too much. God's light would be too much for us. But I believe on behalf of the innocent victims in history that the scales of justice should work out. And if they don't, life is radically unjust. The law of the jungle prevails.
Okay, I'm just going to go to our next question, which we can respond to some of these issues through that. It's a video question.
I don't even know how to respond to that.
From Mingan, New South Wales.
How can there be a compassionate God who is all-powerful and has created us, yet we suffer? Why create such a world in the first place?
Richard Dawkins, you can reflect on that and the previous question.
Well, it's hardly my business to say how could a compassionate God like that exist. Darwin himself said it was impossible for him to believe in a God who was capable of creating such suffering. He actually was talking about suffering in the animal kingdom.
Do you assume that suffering is a natural part of the human condition?
It's a natural part of the living condition. It's a natural part of Darwinian natural selection, which is one of the reasons why I was so keen to say that I didn't want to live by Darwinian principles. There is massive amount of suffering in the natural world, a huge amount of suffering, and it seems to me that's an almost inevitable consequence of Darwinian natural selection. I'm more interested, however, in what's true than in what I would like to be true. It would be very nice if there were no suffering in the world. It would be very nice if there were a sort of natural scale of justice, as the Cardinal was saying. But I'm more interested in in what's true. So it's not the business of an atheist to justify the ways of God to man. It is the business of a cardinal.
Okay, let's go to the cardinal. The question was, how can there be a compassionate God who's all-powerful and has created us, and yet we suffer? Why create such a world in the first place?
I think that's probably the hardest question for us to answer.
Do you struggle with it?
Yes. If I get a chance to say, to ask a question when I die, I think I'll ask the good God, why is there so much suffering? That's a problem for us. I think the greater problem and I'll come back to the question because it's a very good one. That's the heart of what we're about. I think it's a much greater problem for the atheist to explain why there is goodness and truth and beauty. Our problem is to cope with suffering. Now, one of the unique, I think, well, certainly special features of Christian teaching is the value of redemptive suffering. And that is the significance of Christ suffering with us and dying on the cross. And that helps people. My first Easter after I was a priest, it was in the hills in Italy. Very sad village. All the men were away in Germany or Switzerland getting big money, home only for 3 weeks a year. And people were coming to confession, coming for consolation. I was even wetter behind the ears than I am now. I didn't know what to say. And eventually I said to someone, well, look, Christ suffered too. Christ had a bad run. Christ died on the cross, and we believe that through his suffering, good will eventually triumph.
Can I take it to a bigger level than that village, to the Holocaust, to genocide?
To mass starvations, yes.
To famine. If there is an omnipotent and all-powerful God, why does he let these things happen?
Yeah, why does he let all these countries and all the world just go through these mass starvations and mass suffering and wage enslavement and exploitation around the world? Why does he let all this happen instead of letting there be some form of world peace be brought into this world? Because that's what I believe in, but no God I've ever really seen believes in that, especially not yours.
That's a very good question, but if God is going to allow us to be good, he's got to give us freedom. There's no alternative to that. And
but he chose to intervene at different times in history to save the Jews when they were going over the river Jordan. I mean, there are many times when apparently God has intervened in biblical times. Why not now?
Well, that's, I think Revelation is complete. That's a mighty question. He helped probably through secondary causes for the Jews to escape and continue. It's interesting, through these secondary causes, probably no people in history have been punished the way the Germans were. It's a terrible mystery.
Well, there'd be a very strong argument saying that the Jews of Europe suffered worse than the Germans.
Yes, that might be right. Certainly, the suffering in both. I mean, the Jews. There's no reason why they should suffer.
Okay, I'm just going to. We're running out of time. I'm going to go to another question that's on a different subject from Anita Wu.
Jesus preaches, love thy neighbour as thyself. So, Cardinal Pell, how can you be against giving our gay neighbours marriage rights when equality and respect are the fundamental foundations of loving and spreading love?
Yeah. You should get up with your new pope on that.
Well, it's quite misleading and quite unfair to suggest that Christians hate homosexuals.
So how come people like the West Baptist Church bash homosexuals the way they do?
Christians love everybody.
Nah.
We believe that marriage is between a man and a woman, that it is for the continuity of the human race. We believe that men and women are made for one another spiritually, psychologically, physically. We believe that a man and a woman as a father with their children is far and away the best and most efficient and most economical system to bring up children, and governments should support it. For a homosexual couple to have a union, well and good. There's no reason why that can't be.
Can I just interpose a quick question on this? We are running out of time. I mean, do you believe that homosexuality, since it's not a question of choice, is part of God's natural order?
Well, creation's messy. I think it's the Oriental carpet makers always leave a little flaw in their carpet, because only God's perfect.
Sorry, Gabby, you're suggesting that homosexuals are flawed human beings?
Not necessarily. But what
So you're saying you do?
I don't think homosexual activity is simply the result of genetic makeup, because we are free. We can control our instincts, and like with heredity and environment, a lot of this practice is learned. But whatever about it, we've got to try to support these people, show compassion. The Catholic Church has a great record there. We look after more HIV sufferers than any other non-government organisation, but we don't believe it's possible to have homosexual marriage.
I'm going to, we're almost out of time. We've got time for one more question that both of our guests can answer. It's from Catherine Shen.
As an atheist, Professor Dawkins, do you believe that believing in God for emotional support should be allowed even temporarily? Research has proven that people who believe in God has a better chance of surviving terminal illnesses such as cancer, as well as living longer when they go to church. So, do you think that believing in God is beneficial for our well-being, even if God is an illusion?
It's perfectly possible that, as you say, believing in God has beneficial effects upon health. It's possible that you're less likely to suffer a duodenal ulcer or something of that sort. But I do have to stress, I mean, that's an utterly trivial argument compared to the truth of whether the God actually exists or not. I mean, that's a really big question. It's an important question, one that the Cardinal and I would agree on. And if there is some minor benefit to health one way or the other, the evidence is not good, by the way, but even bending over backwards to suggest that the evidence is there, that psychosomatic illness may be healed, may be alleviated somewhat by belief in God. Psychosomatic medicine is well known. Placebos work. If God is simply a placebo, that's fine. But I'm interested in whether he's actually there.
Okay, Cardinal Bell, final word.
Yeah, so am I. It's a question of truth. Christians don't present God as like Santa Claus, something that a myth that's useful for children. And believing in God and being a Christian cuts both ways. More people were killed for their Christian belief in the last century than any other century, probably than all the other centuries combined. They died
Citation needed.
in principle to be faithful to Jesus. So we might get some benefits. We mightn't get ulcers. We might live a bit longer. That might have much more to do with our heredity. But we follow Christ because we believe it's the truth. I think it does bring a peace of mind. It does help us. But sometimes it gets us into... my life would be much simpler and much easier if I didn't have to go to bat for a number of Christian principles.
Have you ever regretted that you did?
Sometimes I wonder.
Seriously?
No.
Okay, that's all we have time for tonight. Before we go, let's check the final results of tonight's Quanda.
Let's check that out.
With, more than 20,000 of you voting. We have a 76% saying no. Religious belief does not make the world. Religious belief does not make the world a better place. Please thank our special guest, Professor Richard Dawkins and Cardinal George Pell.
All right, yeah, well, there we go. There we have it. That was a debate between Dawkins and Pell. Weird freaky cardinal, dude. Yeah, I mean, well, we're born a speck of energy, and when we lose it, we die, not the energy of the human. Yeah. I'm still agnostic overall about it, but I mean, I know there's definitely, like, in a way, I feel like that is I mean, probably in the most simplistic terms, how it probably goes. I mean, because the energy will just like flow, if so, like flow within other parts of the, energy around it, and just reincarnate through life over time. I mean, but yeah, I mean, it's pretty interesting. It was a pretty good debate though. I liked it because Dawkins did bring out a lot of great points, and yeah, I mean, overall, what did you think? Why destroy one more little hit here? I think the next one I'll probably do is do a debate, do another one with Christopher Hitchens, because there's another one here that says that he's debating a Muslim. So that'll be pretty interesting. I might check that out. But I don't know yet. I haven't figured it out. Agreed to some. My thing goes unchanged. Yeah, I mean, doesn't have to like go changing or nothing. I mean, because Dawkins has always been kind of a major inspiration, and especially into my like worldview on, at least in the religious aspect. I mean, I did kind of agree more like 90% of like what he was talking about. Besides mainly just like I wish he elaborated on a couple things, but yeah, I mean, I'll mention after this. But the Cardinal, however, just was throwing little subtle strawman attacks. I've noticed he was also, I mean, he also just dodged a lot of questions, I noticed, and was caught a lot with his pants down, essentially. And worded some nice, something nice, a little weirdly, about some kids in London. Some patriotic boys. Guess that's a Roman Catholic, I'm a hypocrite in beliefs. Well, I mean, essentially, I mean, yeah, I mean, what you sound like to me sounds more like a spiritual deist. Is like what I said, like I was saying before. So I mean, you like in like when it comes to like people who are religious overall, like I never have a problem with someone just being religious. It's the fundamentalist belief where it gets pushed on to me that becomes the problem, because like if you believe in Signor Tamat, if you believe in Allah, if you believe in the flying spaghetti monster, you believe in Cthulhu or whatever, like I mean, I don't care. Have fun. Do it. You're a little weird, but whatever, you know? I mean, we all have our beliefs, so. Or, or disbeliefs, I mean, essentially. Like, just depends on how you view it. But, yeah. Got a lot of tabs up now. Holy shit. But, yeah, man. Ugh. Well, I think I'm going to get some sleep now, because, holy fuck, it is nearly 3 in the morning now for me. Yeah, we've been going on for a nice little 2 hours, so, pretty nice little, subject we went into. I enjoyed it. I'm weird sometimes without religion. Well, I am too. I mean by the people who are, like, weird is the ones who are, like, just, like, the main, like, if you have, like, someone's own interpretation, which, like, you have, like, I can at least respect that more than someone who's, like, following a holy book that is highly contradictory and draconian in a lot of ways. So, I mean, I think one of these times I might do Ignarism on, like, some chunks of the Bible at some point, because I have a lot of them here. Like, a lot. Because, like I said, I have a religious household, so it'll be pretty interesting to probably do that at some point. I don't know if I'll do it anytime soon, but if I ever feel up to it, I'll probably have a friend over on that one so I can help digest it with me. But Yeah. Who knows? Who knows? But anyway, I'm going to get some sleep now. Probably grab a little munch before I go to bed. But anyway. This was another segment of Ignarism, and I'll see you around. Thumb of death right now. Yeah. Bye-bye.